And we have seen protests, not just in the US, but around the world, which were sparked when the news broke. And celebrities were quick to voice their opinions on this contentious issue, including various performers at Glastonbury Festival this weekend, such as American singer-songwriter Billie Eilish, who blasted the ruling as she became the festival's youngest ever headline act. Well, yesterday, the deputy editor of The Spectator, Freddy Gray, penned an article titled "The Problem with Billie Eilish's Roe vs Wade Intervention." Well, we're delighted to say that Freddie joins us now in the studio to discuss that article. And I've got the article here, Freddie.
Yeah.
I had a read over it. Just give us kind of the overview of what you're arguing in there.
Well, it was possibly a slightly mean-spirited piece, and I don't want to be too hard on Billie Eilish. She is 20 years old. But what I find frustrating about this debate, which, as Paul says, is a very difficult, complicated debate, is that it becomes a sort of chance for people to virtue signal. It's an overused word, but it is a virtue signal, to say that old white men, in America have taken away rights from women. And it's just not that simple. In fact, in a way, the opposite is true in what's just happened. The court has just ruled that it's not down to the court to decide on abortion. It's down to the elected representatives. So the debate has changed. Well, the dynamics of the debate have changed in America, and a lot of people think that's overdue, and not just maniac pro-lifers, like me, I should say, but moderates in this debate have accepted for a long time that Roe v. Wade was not a good provision, it was not a good law, and that America missed out on having a democratic debate on abortion in the 70s and 80s, and now they get to have one. And I think in the long run, it's going to be tumultuous, it's going to be very painful, and it's going to be very emotional for a lot of people. But in the long run, it should mean that America settles on a democratic compromise, either state by state, possibly federally, on where they stand on abortion. And I think that's right. I think that's how democracy should operate.
Do you think there is an element, though, that given Roe versus Wade was kind of so fundamental to views on abortion and policy on abortion for the past, 50-odd years, can you understand why probably younger women who've never known anything different do see this as a bit of an erosion of women's rights if states are to completely ban abortion?
I think so, and I think that's a lot to do with sort of cultural propaganda, cultural brainwashing on this matter. I think there's a lot of people who think that, before Roe v. Wade, women were on a mass scale being forced to have babies they didn't want to have. And yes, it's a hugely complicated, difficult issue, but it's an issue for debate. And I think most reasonable, rational people can see there are two sides to this argument. And the problem is that the culture, broadly, music industry and so on, celebrities, they only see the very extreme end of this debate, and that is the militant pro-choice side, and increasingly the Democratic Party do. Billie Eilish, the state where she comes from is California. As a result of this ruling, it's likely that California will become more in favour of abortion, and that in fact, actually, up to birth it'll be easier for women to access abortion up to birth. So it's a complicated issue, and it's about how people feel and how people vote about how they feel and who they elect. And as I say, I think in a democracy that's healthy.
Is it the case, as I touched on in my contribution, Freddie, that it strikes me that it's not much different to the situation we have here in the UK, where it's parliamentarians who decide the law on abortion rather than saying there's a constitutional right? Are you aware that constitutional right, as it was in America, was that something that also applied in other countries throughout the world, or are more countries like Britain in terms of saying, look, these are important decisions, but they're effectively for our elected lawmakers, rather than saying that a court has the right to declare that you have that constitutional right?
No, in most democracies, Britain or France, say it's achieved through the legislature.
So America is coming into line with...
America is yes, America, and that's why, you might say that's why abortion has been so particularly contentious in America, is that the pro-life side, if you like, feel they were robbed of the debate in the 70s and 80s. And there was never a chance to settle on a compromise. And actually, that's why you see Roe v. Wade effectively allowing abortion in the second and third trimester, which doesn't have popular support in America. And you don't have that in Europe. France, I saw Emmanuel Macron gesturing on Twitter about how awful it was what was happening in America. But, of course, in France, abortion is 15 weeks. 14 weeks, sorry, just raised from 12 to 14. And the law which this particular ruling overtakes, the Dobbs law, is 15 weeks in Mississippi. So Mississippi is now becoming slightly more pro-abortion than France. And yet Macron thinks this is a chance to grandstand against America.